In a packed courtroom, tensions are already high when an influential politician, known for his arrogance and sharp tongue, takes the stand. But things take a shocking turn when he hurls a disrespectful comment at the presiding judge, a black woman renowned for her fairness and strength. The room goes silent as everyone processes what just happened. Gasps ripple through the audience, and even the politician's legal team looks uneasy. The judge, calm but visibly firm, meets his insult with a piercing gaze. What follows next leaves the entire courtroom stunned. This isn't just about an insult. It's about power, respect, and consequences that no one saw coming. By the end of the day, the politician's bravado might not be enough to save him. Stick around to see how this jaw-dropping encounter unfolds and witness a moment that will leave you questioning how far arrogance can take someone. The tension in the courtroom was palpable, but the judge remained composed, her expression unflinching. She had faced difficult moments before, yet this one felt different. The politician, a man used to commanding rooms with his charisma and influence, seemed to believe his status would shield him from consequences. His insult wasn't just a personal attack, it carried an air of entitlement, a reminder of the power he thought he held over others. The judge, however, was not someone easily intimidated. A former civil rights attorney, she had spent her career fighting for justice, earning respect for her unwavering integrity. As the silence stretched, the spectators couldn't help but wonder, how would she respond? Would she let his words slide, or would she hold him accountable? Meanwhile, the politician smirked, as if daring her to act. But behind that confident facade, cracks were beginning to show. Something told the crowd this wasn't going to end the way he expected. The judge finally spoke, her voice steady and deliberate, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Mr. Dalton," she began, addressing the politician by name, "this court does not operate under the weight of your ego or privilege. Here, we follow the law." Her words were measured, but there was an unmistakable strength behind them. The room held its breath, every eye locked on the unfolding drama. Dalton leaned back in his chair, the smirk still lingering on his face, but his fingers tapped the table nervously. Outside the courtroom, reporters were already buzzing about the incident, with whispers of Dalton's controversial history surfacing. Inside, the judge's composure remained unshaken, but her staff exchanged knowing glances. They had seen her in moments like this before, firm, unwavering, and unafraid to call out injustice. Even as Dalton's legal team scrambled to maintain control, the courtroom felt like it was teetering on the edge of something seismic. Whatever came next would undoubtedly leave a lasting mark on everyone in the room. The air grew heavier as the judge leaned forward, her piercing gaze fixed on Dalton. "This court does not tolerate disrespect toward its officers or its mission," she said firmly. Her voice, calm but commanding, echoed in the silent room. Dalton's smirk faltered ever so slightly, his confidence starting to waver. The crowd could feel it. This wasn't just a routine courtroom moment. Something bigger was at stake. Dalton's lawyer nervously stood, attempting to smooth things over. "Your Honor, my client meant no offense. Surely we can." But the judge raised a hand, silencing him. "This isn't about what he meant," she interrupted, her tone sharper now. "It's about what he believes he can get away with." Dalton shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his bravado fading under the weight of the moment. Meanwhile, the spectators leaned in, hanging on every word. The tension was electric, every second pulling the courtroom closer to a breaking point. It felt as though the scales of justice themselves were waiting to tip, but which way, no one could yet tell. As the judge prepared to continue, a court clerk hurriedly approached the bench and handed her a note. The judge read it, her expression darkening, though she remained composed. "It seems there's more to this case than meets the eye," she said, her voice carrying an edge that sent a ripple of murmurs through the courtroom. Dalton sat up straighter, suddenly alert. For the first time, the confidence he carried so boldly began to crack. The judge placed the note down deliberately, her eyes locking with Dalton's. "Mr. Dalton," she said, her tone cutting like a blade, Are you aware of the recent subpoena issued regarding your personal financial records? The timing is interesting. Dalton's legal team froze, their faces pale. Dalton's smirk was gone now, replaced by an uneasy tension. The spectators exchanged puzzled looks, the air buzzing with speculation. The judge raised an eyebrow. On the contrary, she replied, her tone steady but firm. This court has just received evidence suggesting that Mr. Dalton's behavior today is part of a larger pattern, one rooted in abuse of power and disregard for the law. She turned to the clerk, who began distributing sealed documents to the defense and prosecution teams. As murmurs spread through the room, Dalton abruptly stood. "This is outrageous," he barked. "You're trying to make an example of me." His voice echoed, but his anger no longer carried the same weight. It sounded desperate. The judge didn't flinch. "Mr. Dalton," she said calmly, "the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how hard one tries to bury it." Then came the twist. A quiet but unmistakable gasp from the crowd as a member of Dalton's own legal team stood and addressed the court. "Your Honor, I must disclose something." The lawyer's voice trembled, but they pressed on. "We have reason to believe that Mr. Dalton deliberately withheld key evidence that directly implicates him in multiple ethics violations." The room erupted. Spectators, reporters, even court staff exchanged shocked glances. Dalton froze, the weight of his unraveling lies visibly crushing him. The judge's gaze remained steady. "Order," she called, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This court will not be used as a stage for arrogance or deception." The politician's downfall was swift and absolute, but as the judge prepared to adjourn, she glanced at the crowd. "Let this serve as a reminder," she said, her voice resonating, "that no one is above the law." And just as the courtroom began to settle, a final murmur rippled through the audience. Someone had noticed the judge discreetly passing another note to her clerk. What more did she know? The story wasn't over yet, and everyone could feel it. As the courtroom emptied, the weight of what had just unfolded lingered in the air. Dalton, once untouchable in his own eyes, sat quietly as his attorney whispered urgently to him. The man who had entered the room with arrogance now seemed smaller, humbled by the very system he had tried to manipulate. The judge watched him for a moment before gathering her notes. Her job was done, for now. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed to capture every angle of the story, their cameras flashing as the stunned politician was escorted out. Among the crowd, murmurs of justice and accountability echoed. The case had exposed more than Dalton's misconduct. It had reminded everyone that power unchecked could, and should, be challenged. As the judge returned to her chambers, she allowed herself a small moment of reflection. Today wasn't just about one man's fall, it was about showing that the truth, no matter how inconvenient, always finds its way forward.